Two little girls who have not been deemed as missing children were just found dead, shoved in suitcases. They were found on Monday, March 2nd in Cleveland's South Collinwood neighborhood. Neither girl has been identified by name yet, but they are both young Black girls. The first one was between the ages of 8.5 and 13 years old. The second girl found is estimated to be between 10.5 and 14 years old. They are either full siblings or half siblings, and the authorities are trying to identify them and figure out who they were, what happened to them, and arrest and charge somebody for their murders. As of today, March 4th, someone has been taken in as a person of interest, and authorities are hoping that that leads to an arrest. That person of interest has not been publicly identified or named as a suspect. The suitcases that the girls were in were both half buried in very shallow graves, and a man discovered them while he was walking his dog, and his dog ran towards the fence line where one of the suitcases was. He said that he called the authorities as soon as he opened one of the suitcases and saw a head. It is absolutely horrific that someone would do this, especially to two young girls, and to disregard them like they were trash. So if you are in that neighborhood or anywhere in that area and there's two girls, half-sisters who you haven't seen in a while, let the authorities know. If you know anything, if you could have seen anything, let them know.
Two more scientists have just died in a private plane crash, a father and a son, who both worked with NASA, making it number 14 and 15 in the growing number of scientists who are vanishing or who are being found dead. This plane crash didn't just kill both of them, but it killed the entire family along with the pilot. This happened in South Carolina and for reasons unknown. So authorities say this investigation is expected to take about a year, but I'm just wondering what's going on. What do they know that we don't? Why are they being taken out? And no, it's not this.
Hopefully, I don't know, coincidence, whatever you want to call it.
Let me know what you guys think.
It is now being reported that another UFO researcher, David Wilcock, has passed away on April 20th, 2026 at age 53. This now makes it number 12 of the researchers and scientists who have passed away or gone missing. David Wilcock was also a New York Times best-selling author, always on the show Ancient Aliens. He also stated many times that he loved his life and planned on living. And the day before he unalived, he said this on his podcast.
Every day that I have on Earth is a gift and a blessing, and I'm very grateful for that because, frankly, people are disappearing. Scientists are going missing. Now they're saying they're going to investigate this. The president himself is saying they're going to look into this and see if anything's going on. It's a little bit scary. I got to say, it's a little bit scary, but you guys knew that I might still show up even though it was last minute and I've had a really rough week. Like, that's kind of like every week, but somehow we keep on making it through all of this.
And it gets even more weird because Nick Pope, who was also on Ancient Aliens, passed away 2 weeks before David Wilcock. Also, David Wilcock's biographer, Win Free, passed 2 days before David Wilcock on April 18th. All of these researchers and scientists who are ending up not alive anymore or missing just isn't adding up. Call it a coincidence if you want, but now it's 12 in a row.
This is going to blow your mind. The count from 11 scientists mysteriously disappearing or dying has now reached 12. David Wilcock has just passed away. Prominent UFO researcher and author, he is number 12. And it is apparently another self-harming situation. But just 2 days before his passing, he posted this video.
I'm excited to be here. Every day that I have on Earth is a gift and a blessing, and I'm very grateful for that because, frankly, people are disappearing. Scientists are going missing. Now they're saying they're going to investigate this. The president himself is saying they're going to look into this and see if anything's going on. It's a little bit scary. I got to say, it's a little bit scary, but you guys knew that I might still show up even though it was last minute and I've had a really rough week. Like, that's kind of like every week, but somehow we keep on making it through all of this.
Here's the investigative report produced by the Sheriff's Department in Boulder County, California. It says a 911 call was received approximately around 10 a.m. on April 20th regarding an unknown problem near the address. Now, right there, I have to pause and ask, who made the call and what was the unknown problem? The emergency communications specialist who took the call suspected the caller was experiencing a mental health crisis. This is what they're saying. Deputies arrived at approximately 11 and made contact with a male outside a residence who was holding a weapon, and within minutes, he used the weapon on himself, and he was pronounced deceased at the scene. Deputies searched the residence and surrounding properties and did not locate any other individuals. There is no known public threat. Similarly, a retired chief of aerospace, Dr. Gregory Rogers, has raised concerns about his own life. He made a video just yesterday. I have posted that full video on my backup account if you'd like to watch it, as I'm unable to post it here. Doesn't it all seem very suspicious? They all have links to aerospace or a defense program. It's getting weird, guys. They're either missing or it's being said that they're taking their own lives. The timeline is wild, and their connections to military, government, NASA.
A youth shelter employee SA'd a 6-month-old baby girl and filmed it. 25-year-old William Flournoy identifies as transgender and also goes by the name Izzy. In the documents that I have read, Flournoy is referred to with he/him pronouns. Flournoy worked at a trans youth center and was also on the youth advocacy board. Flournoy invited a family to move in with him and offered to babysit the kids while the parents were at work. While the parents were at work, Flournoy filmed himself SAing their 6-month-old baby girl using his private parts on the baby. Flournoy uploaded the footage of him SAing the baby on the internet for other creeps to watch and view. Investigators also found that Flournoy had over 46 files of child SA material. Detectives are reviewing leads and digital evidence to figure out if Flournoy had any more victims at the local youth facilities he worked at and volunteered at. Flournoy has not been sentenced yet and remains in custody with his bail set at $1 million. Flournoy is pleading not guilty, which is crazy and absolutely disgusting. Personally, I believe the fact that Flournoy worked at a youth center was no coincidence. He wanted to be near children and he wanted easy access to children. But what do you guys think about this case?
He turned them into hamburger meat and then sold them. Joe Metheny was born on March 2nd of 1953 and was from Baltimore, Maryland. When Joe was about 6 years old, his father passed away, and that left his mother alone to take care of 6 children by herself. Joe's mother described him as someone who was intelligent, kind, and had a good childhood. When Joe turned 18, he joined the army, and that is when he became addicted to substances. As an adult, Joe got the nickname Tiny, which was ironic because he was 6'1" and pretty overweight, so he was anything but small. Once he left the army, he spent most of his time in bars, lived with homeless people in South Baltimore, and spent all of his money on substances. In 1994, Joe met a 39-year-old woman named Catherine Magaziner who worked as a S worker. He ended her life and buried her body near the factory where he worked. But that wasn't enough for Joe. About 6 months later, he went back to that factory, dug up her body, and removed her head. Joe put her head in a box and later threw that box away. In 1995, Joe struck again, but this time it was 2 men who were homeless, Randy Piker and Randall Brewer. After that attack, Joe laid low for about another year. That was until he lured 23-year-old Kimberly Spicer to his new trailer. He promised Kimberly that he would give her substances, but he had no intention of giving them to her. All he wanted to do was end her life. On December 8th of 1996, so about a year later, Joe lured another woman to his trailer, and this woman was named Rita Kemper. While Rita was there with Joe, he wanted to be intimate with her, but that's when she realized that she needed to get going, and he was not going to take no for an answer, so he attacked her. Luckily, Rita was able to crawl out of an open window. She outran him and immediately told police. On December 15th of 1996, Joe was arrested and he claimed that he ended the lives of over 10 people. He stated that the reason he did this was because he wanted revenge. He hated his ex-girlfriend so much that instead of taking his anger out on her, he chose to take it out on other people. While Joe was confessing to everything that had happened, he also confessed that he opened a small food stand during the time, and he would mix human meat with animal meat and make them into burgers and sell them to people. He described his food as saying it was very good and that human meat is very similar to pork and that when you mix it together, no one can really tell the difference. November 13th of 1998, Joe was found guilty, was given the death penalty, but 2 years later, his sentence was changed to life in prison. On August 5th of 2017, nearly 21 years later after Joe was arrested, he was found dead in his cell.
A special needs teacher SA'd her students in just about every way possible. 22-year-old Nadia Horn abused her power as a special needs teacher to groom her extremely underage students and SA them. Nadia even went as far as providing one of her students with an iPhone 14 so that she could Snapchat him very inappropriate and revealing photos of herself. She would also use Snapchat to encourage the student to skip class and just come over to her apartment instead. Nadia would gain the trust of her students and facilitate private meetings with them outside of school. Allegedly, Nadia also provided alcohol to her minor students while they were at her apartment. Nadia brought back 2 of her students to her apartment and SA'd them in just about every way possible. When Nadia was questioned about the SA, she said it felt mutual, which is an insane statement to make. Nadia has not been sentenced yet and is scheduled to return to court for a hearing on May 20th, 2026. So Nadia is just free and out and about right now, which is disgusting, but what do you guys think about this case?
How does an entire family completely go missing without trace? It wouldn't be until 7 years later that police received a chilling tip. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the disappearance of the Jack family. The Jack family consisted of Ronald, who went by the nickname Ronnie, and Doreen, who were both 26 years old, and their 2 sons, Russell, who was 9, and Ryan, who was 4. They were an Indigenous family who, after falling onto hard times, moved to Prince George in British Columbia, Canada. Ronnie had recently lost his job within a sawmill where he worked as a woodcutter after he had sustained an injury to his back, which he was still recovering from. Following this, the Jacks had to live off of state benefits, and with this, they were just there scraping by, not even doing that really. These very hard times saw both of the parents drinking more alcohol. It was reported on at least one occasion one of the children fell unwell and one of the parents was left with no other choice but to steal medicine for them because they couldn't afford to buy it. And as a parent myself, I can only imagine how devastating that feeling must have been, because as a parent you will do anything to protect your child. On the 1st of August 1989, Ronnie is sat in the First Later pub having a couple of pints. He is talking to people there, expressing what a hard time him and his family are going through. And this is when a man approached him. A stranger. This stranger told Ronnie that he wanted to help him, and he was able to offer not only him but his wife jobs at a nearby logging camp. It was just past Lake Kulklutz, which was around about 25 miles away from Prince George, right along the infamous Highway of Tears. Here, Ronnie would be able to get a job chopping some wood, and maybe Doreen could work in the kitchen. As you can imagine, Ronnie was overjoyed at this opportunity, the chance to get not just one wage coming in, but 2 wages. It was something that his family desperately needed. They were destitute, and an opportunity like this would absolutely get them back on the up and up. Ronnie asked this man, "When do you want us to start?" And the man said, "How about now?" Ronnie then explained to him that he didn't have a car, so he didn't know how he was going to get to the logging camp, and that's when this mysterious man said not to worry, he would take them. And so, off they went. The men would leave the pub together and made their way to Ronnie's home on nearby Strathchona Avenue. Once inside the home, Ronnie would ring his mum, and he was elated, telling her about this job opportunity, how he had accepted it, and he was going to be gone for a couple of weeks. He would then make a phone call to his brother. One source stated that Ronnie asked his brother if he could watch Ryan and Russell so he and Doreen could work. When his brother said no, he wasn't able to watch the boys, that is when the stranger said, "Don't worry, we have a daycare on site." Other sources would state that Ronnie didn't ask his brother this, but either way, he was told there was a daycare on site and that the boys could go with them. Ronnie Jack awoke his wife and children, and following his lead, the entire family piled into this stranger's dark-coloured 4x4, leaving their home at around 1:30 a.m. After this, they have never been seen again. The family were reported missing on the 25th of August when Ronnie's mum wasn't able to get in touch with them. And to say that police fumbled this investigation would be the understatement of the year. Just to give you an idea on how much they fumbled this, they actually said the family were found in early September, only they hadn't. I have no idea where that came from. Eventually, a search of the Jack's house was conducted, and police had an early theory that maybe the family had just decided to up and leave. But that didn't seem feasible. Everything that the family owned was still inside of their home, and they were living bang on the poverty line, so there's no way that they could have afforded to leave town and leave everything they owned behind. Plus, they had no reason to leave. Russell was just about to start school in the area.
Witnesses would describe the man who Ronnie left the bar with as being in his 30s. He was around about 6 feet tall, up to 275 pounds. He had reddy brown hair and a full beard. Authorities came up with this composite sketch, and that's all they really had to go off. They had no names, they had no other leads or evidence, and so because of that, the investigation into the disappearance of the Jacks family began to go cold. It wouldn't be until 7 years later that someone called the police with a chilling, eerie tip. The person called the police and told the operator, quote, "The Jack family are buried at the south end of the ranch." The caller then immediately hung up and did not give the operator 2 seconds to ask any other questions. The call was traced back to a house in Vanderhoof, which was almost 60 miles away from where the family had lived. But despite this, they were never able to track down the caller. Apparently, on the day that this call was made, the person living there had thrown a house party, so lots of people were inside the home. To this day, there has been no trace of the Jack family. We have no idea where Ronnie, Doreen, Russell and Ryan have gone or what has happened to them.
A 17-year-old was found hanging from a swing set, and while officials ruled it, many still question what really happened. Lenen Lacy was 17, a star football player, and a bright kid who had a smile that could light up any room. That morning, he had laid out his varsity uniform, ready for the first game of the season. He was just a normal kid, excited about life. But that night, he was found hanging from a swing set in his neighborhood in Bladenboro, North Carolina. The official ruling was suicide, but the more you look at it, the less it makes sense. First, let's talk about the shoes. Lenen was wearing white sneakers that were a size and a half too small. His brand new Air Jordans that he had bought the day before were nowhere to be found. Why would a kid his age just ditch his favorite shoes? Then there's the swing set itself. Lenen was 5'9", and the crossbeam was 7.5 feet high. There were no swings, no stool, no platform nearby. So how could he have done this alone? And the noose. It wasn't made from his belt. It was created from a black and a blue belt being tied together, but they didn't belong to him. He was wearing elastic sweatpants. He didn't need a belt. Investigators missed other details too. Photos weren't taken of the original scene. His hands weren't bagged to preserve DNA. His room and phone weren't searched in the crucial first days. And then there's the bleach. His mother noticed the faint smell on his body, meaning that someone was cleaning up evidence. Lenen's relationship also drew attention. He was dating a 31-year-old white woman, and neighbors had whispered warnings. Was that just prejudice or something more sinister? The FBI eventually investigated, and the Department of Justice ruled in no homicide, no hate crime. But how do you explain a teen hanging from a beam that's way too high, in shoes that aren't his, and with belts that don't belong to him? How do you explain the bleach on his body? There is a story here that just doesn't add up. Something happened to Lenen Lacy that night in 2014, and it wasn't suicide. What do you guys think about this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
He brutally SA'd his own daughter for hours, and nothing is being done about it. 18-year-old Michaela Settles moved to Moore Park to live with her biological father, Stephen Chavez. Michaela had plans to attend Moore Park College and pursue her educational goals. Just 2 days after moving in, Stephen provided Michaela with alcohol and waited until she was intoxicated. Once Michaela was intoxicated, Stephen SA'd his own daughter for approximately 4 hours. After the assault, Michaela fled from the house barefoot and called her mom, begging her mom to come pick her up. When her family found her, Michaela was so severely injured that she couldn't even walk, and her uncle had to carry her. Michaela was taken to the hospital, and there they confirmed the presence of her father's DNA. Michaela also gave her statement to the police. Initially, Stephen was arrested and charged, but as time went on, he was released. Michaela was so traumatized that 5 months after the assault, Michaela ended up taking her own life. This case is slowly starting to be forgotten about because Michaela isn't alive to give her testimony in the courtroom, even though there is more than enough evidence. Stephen is currently out on bail, living his life free to do whatever he wants. Based on the current charges, The maximum sentence that Stephen may face is only 3 years in prison, which is absolutely mind-blowing and insane. But what do you guys think about this case?
Story time about the affair my mom was having with a married man while she was married as well. And trust me, this isn't a normal fucking affair story, okay? This shit is a sick and twisted story, so you will want to stay and watch. So if you've been watching my content for a while, you know that me and my mom were best friends. So my mom vented to me about everything, but you know, if you also have been watching my story, my mom was very abusive throughout my childhood. So I really don't give a fuck to be airing her business, honestly, because my mom was a fucking snake my whole childhood. So it is what it is. Okay. Before you come on me talking about airing my mom's business. So if you've been watching my content as well, you know, my mom's very male centered. Okay. And so my mom always picks jobs that are very male centered. My whole childhood, or after my mom got divorced with my dad, she started working at a gas station. She loved working at the gas station, okay? Because men at the gas station, as we all know, are men at the gas station. So my mom was being hit on all the fucking time, and she ate that shit up. Well, in comes a man named Robert one day, okay? And her and Robert kind of hit it off. And now, on a daily basis, Robert is finding excuses to come inside the gas station to see my mom. And they're flirting. Days, weeks, months go by of Robert coming in the gas station to see my mom. And then it got to a point where he wasn't even coming to the gas station making excuses anymore. He would just come to the gas station to see my mom. And, you know, eventually they do let each other know that they're both married. But it gets so serious that they actually start telling each other that they love each other. So now my mom's like, I'm in love with a man, right? So now my mom's calling me and venting to me about Robert. And it was exhausting, okay? Because it's like, dude, he's a married man. You're a married woman. Like, what's going on? She'd be like, I have a feeling that he's still sleeping with his wife. And I'm like, you're still sleeping with your husband? Like, what are we talking about? And mind you, I'm taking this shit a little personally, okay? Because I recently had just gotten cheated on with my baby daddy. So now I'm like, this shit is not cool. You know what I mean? Like, I did not for once make my mom think that this shit was okay. But mind you, also, my mom's husband is a fucking pedophile, okay? I had him arrested when I was like 12 or 13 years old. So part of me was like, I hate this situation. But the other part of me was like, now my mom will finally leave the man that I had arrested for being a goddamn pedophile. So it was like, I loved it and I hated it, you know, because I was finally like, oh my God, my mom's gonna leave my abuser. Thank fucking God. But on the other hand, I'm like, dude, this is fucking sick. And there's a woman out here that's gonna be devastated over this. And this is where shit gets sick, okay? Because this man's like trying to convince my mom that he's not still sleeping with his wife. And my mom's like, oh, like, I just hate that you still, like, do you still sleep in the same bed as her? Like, can you, like, maybe sleep in a guest bedroom? And he was like, dude, I haven't slept with my wife in forever. And to prove it to you, which he would be dead if I was the wife. To prove it to you, we have cameras in every single one of our bedrooms in our house. We have a camera in the living room. We have a camera in the kitchen. We have a camera in every single bedroom in the goddamn house. So, to prove to you that I'm not sleeping with my wife, here's the username and here's the password to my security system so you can watch in live time what's going on in my household. So my mom comes to Texas to visit me, right? My mom lives in Florida. She came to Texas to visit me and she's telling me about this. And she was like, and look at her right now. She's in the kitchen doing dishes. I'm literally watching a woman doing her dishes in the fucking kitchen. And she's like, and look how dirty the house is. Like, look at all of his laundry on the bed. She doesn't even do his laundry. What? What are we doing right now? And I'm actually feeling rage for the goddamn wife. Okay? Because I'm like, oh, if I was the wife, this is one of those times where I'd be like, yeah, I get why she killed her fucking husband. Because what do you mean you gave your fucking mistress our camera passwords and she was watching me on a daily basis? My mom was obsessed. She watched this woman every single fucking day. And mind you, my mom FaceTimed him around me too. So she like introduced me to this man. And I knew right off the bat, this man was a fucking arrogant asshole. He was fucking arrogant. Like the first time we met, he was like, God, you're so pale. And it's like, you fucking bald fucking fat bitch. This man was bald and this man had a beer gut. Like, this man was not that guy by no means. So anyway, now they're coming up with a plan on how they're gonna leave their spouses and run away together. So my mom tells me, hey, I'm going to leave my husband. He's going to leave his wife, and we're going to run away to North Carolina together. Mind you, my sister's living with my mom at this point. So my sister's having to like be a part of this plan. My sister was an adult, but whatever. She had to be a part of this. And that's exactly what happens. They move into a shithole apartment in North Carolina. And almost immediately there's issues. It's a very small apartment, so they're very confided. Like both of them are used to coming from homes and like a nice normal living situation, and now they're living in like, you know, Section 8. And they're not really getting along, right? Because it's just not an ideal situation. So in one morning in particular, my sister calls me and she was like, hey, you know, Robert really hurt my feelings this morning. And I'm like, what happened? And she was like, Robert came out into the living room and asked us what we wanted for breakfast. And she offered, hey, maybe you can go grab donuts. That's easy. That's quick. And he was like, I don't know if you should eat donuts. I think you should eat a salad. Mind you, my sister's obese. He said this right in front of my mother, and my mother said nothing. They weren't even together living in this apartment for a month until he was like, fuck this shit, I'm going back to my wife. He goes back to the wife and he tells his wife everything. He tells his wife about my mom. He tells his wife about the plan, what happened, where they met. He told his wife everything. So now my mom and his wife are beefing on Facebook. And Robert didn't just tell his wife, you know, the basics. He told his wife that my mom douched every day because her pussy stunk so bad. He told my mom that my mom's tampons were green and my mom would leave them in the toilet and let them float around for everybody else to see. Mind you, all of this shit is true. Okay? That's why I was like, oh my God. Like, because I lived with my mom. I know my mom's fucking gross. She does douche every day. So I was like, oh my God, I could not believe he's like telling his wife all of my mom's dirt. So then my mom, of course, naturally starts telling her all her dirt that she knows that Robert told her about his wife, right? So she was like, oh, well, I watched you on the cameras and your house is disgusting and you don't do his laundry and blah, 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 blah. Listen, again, if I found out my husband gave the mistress the camera passwords, he would be dead. Anyway, of course, naturally, now my mom has to go back to her husband. And so she does. And he welcomes her with open arms. And literally, like 3 days after my mom moves back into their house, he got my mom's fucking face tattooed on his arm. Talk about a little fucking pussy whipped bitch. Anyways, everyone moved on with their lives. I'm sure Robert's still with his wife. My mom's still with her pedophile husband. And it's as if nothing ever happened. Anyways, thanks for watching.
This is Corey Richens' reaction to her friend testifying that Corey said things would be better off if Eric was dead. Corey is currently on trial because prosecutors say that she drugged her husband not once, but twice, and the second time was successful. She's the same woman who wrote that children's book about grief before she was charged. Corey and Becky were friends, and Becky had recently went through a divorce, so Corey helped Becky get a job at Eric's company. So in December of 2021, Eric's company would get together a bunch of presents for underprivileged children for Christmas, and Becky went to hang out with Corey so they could wrap presents together on December 17th. Becky testified that she remembers that day because she journals and she had photos of it. Like most women and friends do, you chat about life, and so Corey's marriage was brought up, especially because Becky had just went through a divorce. And so Becky testified that Corey was telling her about a fight that Corey and Eric had just had. Allegedly, Eric had paid for a sleigh ride for the family, but on that same day, Corey had been invited to some sort of work gala that she really wanted to go to help push her career, the career that was doing so well that she was millions of dollars in debt. Becky said that Corey told her that she felt trapped. There was no easy way forward, that Eric would take the children from her and turn the community against her. This aligns perfectly with a conversation that Corey had with another friend back in 2021, where she also said she felt trapped and that Eric would get the kids. But this is where things get crazy, because Becky claims that Corey said that things would just be better off if Eric was dead. The prosecution is done. They handed over to the defense, and my jaw was on the ground. Allegedly, after Corey was charged, Eric's family got Becky in contact with the private investigator, and she had an interview about her relationship with Corey. According to the defense in her testimony in that interview, she never once mentioned that Corey had said things would be better off if Eric was dead. Then it gets crazier. So she had an interview almost 2 years later after the interview with the PI, and apparently the investigators told her, hey, we heard you had a conversation with Katie, which is Eric's sister, and that you left something out of your conversations with Corey. That is when Becky allegedly tells investigators, yeah, she said things would be better off if Eric was dead. But then it gets crazier because the defense asked her, did you tell investigators that you would not feel comfortable testifying that on the stand? And she said that she does not recall that. So the defense said, bring out the recording.
And this part, I swear she said it, but I also feel like if you put me on the stand, I would not be confident enough to actually truly know if she said it. But I swear she said, in many ways, it would be better if he just died.
She goes on to confirm that was her voice and reluctantly confirms that that is what she said. And then they play the second clip.
That you wouldn't be able to swear to it on the stand, didn't you? I wouldn't be confident in that. Yes. Okay. And then if we could play the second clip. Yeah, well, like I said, that's the conversation we had. And I for sure know she said the trap stuck, and I am 90% sure she said the comment about it being better dead.
So then the prosecution comes back for more questions, and they asked Becky, why did you remember this conversation at all? And Becky said after going through her divorce, she realized that you can have a lot of different emotional thoughts about it. But she said that Corey said the silent part out loud. So while it's not the craziest thing for someone to think, wow, this would be just so much easier if they were dead, that you don't say it. And then the next question made it worse for herself. The prosecution asked, why didn't you say it in the interview with the PI? And she said that after that interview, she went to her friends to ask her friends to confirm if she had told them that. So basically, she goes back to her friends like, hey, do you remember when I told you about the conversation I had with Corey? Did Corey actually say this? Like, did I tell you she said this? And she said that her friends confirmed that that is what she told them. And that is why she felt confident testifying today. She said she takes the justice system very seriously and that she would never get on the stand and testify if she wasn't sure. But on this day, she was sure. So the defense comes back and they're like, so your story now is that someone else told you the statement. And Becky was like, no, like it's really hard to be up here to have to testify against somebody that I cared about with such serious charges. She said she doesn't want to be here, that no one told her to say this or gave her the statement, and that it's unfortunate that it's the truth. Then the defense brings it back to the friends. So remember, she asked the friends to confirm that that is what she said to them. And the defense says, was that friend Katie, which is Eric's sister. Eric's sister from day one has believed that Corey did this. So Becky says, no, Katie was absolutely not the friend that I spoke to. She had nothing to do with this. And the defense is like, well, Katie's the one who told the PI that you said this in the first place. So Becky confirmed they had conversations, but Katie was not involved in that conversation. And the defense was like, wouldn't it be a really stupid thing to say to you if Corey was planning to take her husband's life 70 something days later? And then they basically called her a bad friend and was like, did you ever even ask Corey what she meant or have her explain it to you, anything? And Becky said, unfortunately, no. And the defense was like, you were her friend. You had a very long time to ask her and you didn't. And Becky said, I suppose so. Then the state comes back and asked her if there was any indication that Corey was joking or was this a serious conversation? And Becky said it was absolutely serious. There was nothing to indicate that it was a joke. Then the defense comes back and was like, were y'all drinking at the time? And Becky said she had one drink. To be completely honest, Corey to me genuinely looked shocked. She has made a lot of facial expressions through this trial, and this one screams to me, what did you just say? And then on top of that, the recordings where Becky said she didn't feel 100% confident in testifying that on the stand. Honestly, because of all of this, even if Becky is telling the truth, I personally, if I was a juror, would not be able to accept this as a fact. Next, we're going to talk about Chelsea, which was Corey's best friend, who she majorly screwed over. It was actually so sad to see this woman testifying. So stay tuned. I'll have it up as quick as I can.
She had disappeared 2 other times in the past, but this time she was never found. What happened to Hannah Upp? Hannah Marie Upp was 32 years old and living in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands at the time of her disappearance. She was a school teacher and she was going into her 4th year teaching at the school she was at. She was very well liked. She had many friends. She was just a social girl who was also very active. She loved to swim and she loved to dance. She did eventually suffer from dissociative fugue, though. And according to the Cleveland Clinic, this is a condition that is very rare and usually caused by severe trauma. And what it is it is memory loss that causes people to go to unexpected places. Mostly people will regain their memory. Sometimes, very rarely, is it permanent. In 2008, as a Pace University grad, Hannah got a job as a Spanish middle school teacher in New York City. And August 28th, 2008 was the first day of school, which is very exciting. But Hannah went for a run that morning and then never showed up to school. She was eventually reported missing and wouldn't be found for 20 days. On September 16th, she was brought to a Staten Island hospital for hypothermia, dehydration, and severe sunburns. She was found floating face down in the New York harbor, and she was still wearing her sports bra and shorts from the day she went missing. To Hannah, though, she was running, and then 10 minutes later, she was in the back of an ambulance. She had no memory of anything. She knew she was Hannah at this point, but she had no idea where she slept, where she went, what she ate, nothing. This is when doctors would diagnose her with dissociative fugue, and they talked to her about how it's usually caused by severe trauma, but she said she didn't have any trauma and she wasn't running from anything. Doctors would assure her it's usually a once-in-a-lifetime experience and it shouldn't happen again, except it did in 2013. In 2013, Hannah was a teacher in Kensington, Maryland, and the first day of school was coming up again. September 3rd, 2013, except Hannah would miss the first day of school again, and they reported her missing. They would find her phone and her wallet on the sidewalk. Thankfully, she was found after 2 days instead of 20 days this time. She was in a creek bed with a shopping cart next to her when she came to it. Now, if I was her, this once-in-a-lifetime experience that has now happened to me twice, I would feel confident it's not going to happen again. Except it might have, and it didn't end the way this other 2 times did. It's now 2017, and she's living in St. Thomas and loving her life. She loves her friends. It's paradise there, and it is amazing. Except, unfortunately, September 6th, a Category 5 hurricane, Hurricane Irma, came sweeping through. And if you don't remember, Hurricane Irma caused catastrophic damage and is the 4th strongest landfalling Atlantic hurricane today. But Hannah ended up being fine, and she was communicating with friends and family the entire time. Except now she has to prepare for another hurricane, Hurricane Maria. Most people were leaving the island at this point, but Hannah decided to stay to help the school prepare to be hit again. Friends and her coworkers thought she was acting strange at this time, but I haven't seen any examples of what she was doing that was so strange, but they're quoted as saying she was acting strange. But on September 14th, 2017 at 8 a.m., she decided to go for a swim at her favorite beach, Sapphire Beach. But she would miss a meeting at the school that day, and they became worried and started to search for her. They knew Sapphire Beach was her favorite, so they went there. They found her keys, her car, passport, phone, everything. But no Hannah. They didn't find her at any homeless shelters, hotels, hospitals, anywhere. And unfortunately, when September 20th came, Hurricane Maria hit. Hannah Upp remains missing as of April 2026. It's unknown if she went into another state of dissociative fugue and left the island, if she was swimming and ran into a current and drowned, or what exactly happened to her. In 2018, skeletal remains washed up on an island near St. Thomas. Unfortunately, it was only bones at this point, and there were no identifying factors, and they weren't really able to retain any information. This part does kind of confuse me a bit because if you pull it up on NamUs, they have a near complete or complete skeleton. So I would think that they would be able to get some sort of DNA from that. I mean, comment if I'm wrong. I totally could be. But you think that they would be able to get something from it. Maybe they're just waiting for technology to get better. I don't really know. If you or anybody you know has any information regarding Hannah Upp's disappearance, or if you know somebody that you believe could be Hannah and she just doesn't know who she is at this point, you can contact the U.S. Virgin Islands Police Department, St. Thomas, at 340-774-2211. Thank you for listening to Hannah's story. Be sure to follow for more true crime, and if you have any case recommendations, feel free to comment them or directly message me.
She had bought a one-way ticket home just a month before she fell off this dinghy and her husband just couldn't save her. According to her mother, they have also found her Apple Watch. She believes it may have been on the beach, but she couldn't confirm. If you haven't been following this case, Lynette and her husband, Brian Hooker, took out their dinghy last Saturday. They're in the Bahamas. They're originally from Michigan, but they retired and now they travel. The sun was starting to set. They're out on the dinghy when suddenly Brian claims that Lynette just fell overboard into the water. He said the strong winds and current just started pulling her away, but here's the thing. He says that she had the key, so the engine shut off. In a recording of him, he also says that she had the spare key in her dry bag, which she had on her. Then he loses one of his oars and he just can't get to her. So instead of jumping into the water and swimming after Lynette or paddling towards her or doing literally anything, he paddles back to shore to get help, which took him 7 hours. Mind you, this man is a veteran. He was in the military and he left his wife behind. He said the sun just set so quickly he couldn't see her anymore and, he took off. It was about 4 a.m. when he finally found someone to get help, and it wasn't until about 5 a.m. that people were starting to search for her. He wasn't arrested until several days later, and according to his attorney, when he was arrested, the police took him out on their boat to go back to his main boat to search. The attorney claims that he was in handcuffs on the boat trying to keep his footing, that he ends up slipping, fell off the boat into the water and almost drowns, injured his knee. Now he has fallen overboard too. Now here's the thing. He was arrested based off probable cause that the police believed that they had, and they took him into custody. However, he has not yet been charged. They have a set amount of hours that they have to charge him or they have to release him. And they did file for an extension, which means that tomorrow he will have to be released if they do not charge him. According to the people closest to them, they had a very volatile relationship. Just as recently as a month ago, Lynette purchased a one-way flight back home. She purchased it. She bought the ticket. And this was not the first time that Lynette attempted to leave. According to her mother, Lynette several times showed up at her door, battered and bruised, having left Brian. Allegedly, there was one time that he choked her and threatened to throw her overboard, and later said he wished he had went through with it. According to her daughter and Brian's stepdaughter, there was a time when she was in 3rd grade that Brian choked his own daughter. They even went to court for that, but somehow he was acquitted for it, even though there were marks on his child's neck. Back in 2015, there was another DV incident involving the police, but Lynette was arrested. However, charges were dropped because they couldn't prove who was the actual aggressor. Her mother said Lynette even took photos of all the bruises that she had on her to look back at, to remind herself why she doesn't want to go back to him. But unfortunately, the cycle of abuse is so hard to break. It takes on average 7 times for a victim to finally leave and stay away. During the time that they leave is the most dangerous time. So did she say that she was going to take that flight? What happened Saturday night on that boat? Did she even get onto the boat alive? Did she even get on the boat at all? When we get more details on the Apple Watch and where exactly it was found and all the other details on if he's actually going to be charged, I will update. I'm just praying they find Lynette and her family can have closure.